Hey everybody, it's me just making another video. Just thought I'd make a video today. Really, I was supposed to be working today, but I took a PTO because of this. My thumb is all messed up. But anyhow, this is just going to be a video about me talking about SummerSlam, like the history of SummerSlam from 1988 all the way to 2009. Just giving you 2008, just getting you ready for SummerSlam, which is coming in a couple days. Really, SummerSlam was like a card that was traditionally good. Feuds would usually get settled at SummerSlam, and everything else would get settled at SummerSlam. And then you would have storylines that were sort of getting you ready from SummerSlam, moving all the way to the next pay-per-view, and that's pretty much what SummerSlam was gonna do. And then, of course, like what Spinnernet said in his video, as he did something similar to what I'm doing. You would always have title changes for the Intercontinental title. I mean, it would always be expected for the Intercontinental title to change hands at every pay-per-view, and that's what would happen at SummerSlam, and it'd be a pay-per-view that you would look forward to because of one particular match or a couple matches that just made you pumped up for SummerSlam. But as of late, SummerSlam hasn't really been like what it's been in the past. From 2008 to 2007 to 2006 to 2005, even to 2005, yeah, and maybe 2004 and 3, SummerSlam just hasn't really lived up to its expectations. And really, I'm just going to give you a brief history of SummerSlam, going from when it started in 1988 all the way to 2008. So let's get started with this video. We move over to SummerSlam 1988. Really, this was not a very good pay-per-view. It's only memorable for a couple things. The main event, and of course Ultimate Warrior squashing the Honky Tonk Man in under a couple minutes to become the Intercontinental Champion. But other than that, really there was nothing on this pay-per-view that wowed you and said it that you really needed to see this pay-per-view, because it really did nothing to really get you pumped and excited for it. And that's really what this pay-per-view just didn't do. It didn't really live up to its expectations, and this was the first SummerSlam too. And like I said, just not a really good pay-per-view. Undercard was terrible, and there was only one. There was maybe like one good match that I can remember, or one good moment, and that was the Ultimate Warrior squashing the Honky Tonk Man. Other than that, maybe the British Bulldogs against the Fabulous Rougeau brothers. But other than that, really there was nothing on this pay-per-view that really got you excited for, and really kind of just showed you that WWE kind of, when it came to pay-per-view, when it came to a big pay-per-view like this, they weren't really ready to kind of compete with their own pay-per-views. WrestleMania would kind of be at the same level at WrestleMania, but that kind of would all change at the 1989 SummerSlam, where they kind of improved over what happened at SummerSlam 1988, when really there was a couple good matches, two good matches on here. And then, of course, I believe the undercard really wasn't that good at all, but still, this was a good pay-per-view, and it helped settle feuds and everything else. The most notable matches I can remember from this pay-per-view that would make you want to see this was the Ultimate Warrior against Rick Rude and the Brainbusters against the Hart Foundation. That was a very good matchup between the two. As well, those were some good matches, as the Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude had a way better matchup than the WrestleMania 5 matchup. I thought the WrestleMania 5 matchup was okay, but this match sort of blew that match away. It was probably one of the matches of the night. And then, of course, the Brainbusters and the Hart Foundation sort of having their feud over the WWE Tag Team titles. That was a good matchup, and it set up another matchup between the two teams, where the Hart Foundation, I believe, beat the Brainbusters to recapture the tag team titles. But overall, it was a very good matchup and just showed how underrated the Brainbusters were. And then, of course, the undercard really wasn't that really good. The undercard at SummerSlam 1989 really wasn't that good. There was no memorable matches that made you want to talk about or made you want to see. But other than that, and of course, the main event was just truly awful, as it was Hulk Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake against Zeus and Macho Man Randy Savage. Really, it was not a very good main event. In the end, it saw Hogan use Miss Elizabeth's shoe to hit Zeus in the head, and then of course Hogan leg dropped Zeus, and that would be the end of the match. But overall, this was a terrible matchup. Savage tried and Hogan did what he could, but really Zeus had no business being in this matchup, as he no sold none of the offense in this matchup, and that's really why this was just a truly awful main event. And then moving over to the 1990 SummerSlam pay-per-view, which saw Hulk Hogan. It was a very good pay-per-view. It saw a six-man tag, I believe it was Tito Santana and the Rockers against Rick Martel, and I forgot who the other two teams were in that matchup. It saw Hulk Hogan and Earthquake settle their matchup, their feud in this one-on-one matchup with Hulk Hogan's return. Really disappointing matchup, considering that they built this matchup for that whole entire year, and then Hulk Hogan being out of action, and this was sort of like the payoff to their feud. But really, it was an okay matchup. The only main gripe that I have with this matchup was the fact that this match ended in a countout. They could have had Hulk Hogan pin Earthquake and then set up another match between the two, or had Earthquake defeat Hulk Hogan and then set up another match between the two. But WWF felt they had to end that match in a count out, but still it was an entertaining matchup for what it was. You had Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude finally in their feud in a steel cage matchup for the WWF title. Really, this was a disappointing matchup, as it really didn't live up to the hype, and these two really didn't do anything to really get you sucked into the matchup. There was only like one memorable highlight in this matchup: Rude hitting a move off the top rope, and other than that, it was just really a squash matchup for the Ultimate Warrior, and nothing really memorable to note in this matchup. And then, of course, you had the Intercontinental title matchup between Kerry Von Erich and Mr. Perfect, which ended in which was a squash matchup. They squashed one of their most talented wrestlers, Mr. Perfect, one of the best things they had going around that time, which was Mr. Perfect, and they just basically squashed them for Kerry Von Erich in a really quick matchup, which saw Kerry Von Erich used the tornado punch to beat Mr. Perfect in a match that could have been longer, but really wasn't that longer. And it ended with Kerry Von Erich becoming your new Intercontinental Champion. Other than that, this really was not a memorable pay-per-view. Just the only matches I really remember from this pay-per-view is just only memorable for three things: the Hulk Hogan Earthquake matchup, the Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude matchup, the final time those two went out one-on-one against each other, and then Kerry Von Erich squashing Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental title. There was nothing memorable at no of that pay-per-view, but still it was a pretty good pay-per-view for what it was, but still not too many things memorable. The undercard wasn't really memorable, except for the Hart Foundation against Demolition in the 2 out of 3 falls matchup. That was a pretty good matchup as well. So really, you only had 3 good matches on this pay-per-view, and then other than that, the rest of the undercard really wasn't that good. But still, good pay-per-view for what it was. Then moving over to 1991, SummerSlam 1991. This was an okay pay-per-view. Really, this pay-per-view was only memorable for a couple things. It was memorable for Vince McMahon firing the Ultimate Warrior off screen, Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage getting married on screen, and then, of course, Jake the Snake Roberts attacking Macho Man Randy Savage with that snake attacking Macho Man Randy Savage. Of course, it had the tag team match, which ended Sergeant Slaughter's reign of terror in the WWF, and then Sergeant Slaughter will return into a face after this tag team matchup. Of course, it had the Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart matchup for the Intercontinental title match, which is probably one of the best Intercontinental title matches in SummerSlam history, and best Intercontinental title match in history. Although the Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man Randy Savage match is sort of slightly better, it was still a good matchup. It also had, I believe, there was another matchup on there. Yeah, there was other matches on there, like. Yeah, that was only memorable. Those are only memorable matches as of note. Oh, of course, you had the Legion of Doom winning the tag team titles, and then overall, the undercard really wasn't that good. Some of it was good, but still, this was an okay pay-per-view for what it was. I highly enjoyed this pay-per-view, and stay tuned for part 2 for my history of SummerSlam.